The sales price on this is 1.8 million because of the complexity that's involved. And the only way that you can do that is by going into that detail and having someone to really understand what the customer's needs are.
Welcome to the MTD podcast. I'm Giovanni Albanese, hosting today's show, a passionate engineer and a very proud member of the MTD team. It's always great to return to this fantastic engineering facility in Coventry. I'm at the headquarters of DMG Mori UK, a £1 billion global organisation and world-leading supplier of machine tools, automation and technology. Together, we have embarked on a podcast journey through 2021, looking at all aspects of the UK engineering business. Today, we will be discussing special projects. You may refer to them as turnkey projects, a subject that's becoming more and more important within our industry, in my opinion. I'm joined by three guests. Firstly, Steve Finn, an industry leader, an ambassador for everything engineering, and Managing Director of DMG Mori UK. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Gio. Great to be around the table again.
Steve, it's always great to be back, and thank you very much for having us back at DMG Mori UK. Secondly, we have the pleasure to be joined by Kevin Buck, Technical Project Specialist at DMG Mori UK, a true engineer with vast knowledge and expertise within our industry. Welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Thank you, Gio. Nice to be here.
Now, Kevin, I've done a bit of research, and we have something in common. Do you know what that is?
No, go on. Enlighten me.
We both did our mechanical engineering apprenticeship at North Warwickshire College in Nuneaton.
Okay, yes, that's correct.
They do say that all the best engineers do come from Nuneaton. So welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Thank you.
We'll discuss a bit of your background in the industry shortly.
Yeah,
and last but not least, we also have the pleasure to be joined by MTD's very own Mark Deadman. Mark Deadman started his publishing career in 1993 and has been involved with the manufacturing industry ever since. 1994, working with some of the top publications ever since. In 2014, Mark became a proud director of MTD. Welcome to the podcast again,
Hi,
Mark.
Gio. No, it's good to be back. But one thing I was going to say is that one thing you don't have in common with Kevin, he's not Italian. But,
well, you never know.
He's good looking.
Born and bred in the town that you're living in, I believe.
I know, yeah, you come from the Nuneaton.
That's correct.
So, Kevin, let's start with you. Kevin, turnkey projects, special projects, it's becoming more and more important within our industry, I believe. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, a lot of companies now want to order a machine tool with a full engineered components, tool holding, work holding. The whole project needs to be delivered in a running state. Often they want you to also supply a solution for the measurement as well of those parts.
Well, we're going to deep dive into this during this podcast, but firstly, can you give our listeners a little bit of an insight into your journey in engineering and why you got into it?
Yeah, I started as a recommendation from my grandfather, who was working in Rolls-Royce many, many years ago in Coventry. And I visited my grandfather, and I had a number of opportunities for apprenticeships, but I decided that I would go down the route of machine tools. And my grandfather advised me to do that for the reason that if you go through machine tool apprenticeship, you learn good mechanics, you learn electronics, you learn pneumatics, and you learn hydraulics, all of the many facets of a machine tool and how to apply that machine tool. So I served my time actually at a company called Alfred Herbert in Coventry. And at the end of that apprenticeship, I then decided that there was a lot of machines with this CNC control on that was quite interesting, and I wanted to learn about that and get into that technology, if you like, because I always have loved technology, especially machine tool technology. Well, I love technology in all sorts of products, Apple products or whatever.
I mean, looking at your portfolio or your CV, if you like. Kevin, you've got vast experience in lots of different areas within the engineering industry, not just in one specific. You've got a broad knowledge of engineering.
Yeah, I started after I left Alfred Herbert. I went to Matrix Churchill, and there I worked as a customer demonstration and training engineer for a number of years. Also, while we were in there, we used to do demonstrations for customers. So, yeah, set up a machine. But you always used to get the most difficult job, Gio. You never got the easy job. Right. And I remember a number of salesmen used to quite like utilising themselves because they used to just go to the booth, pull out a billet of material, pull out a drawer and say, right, manufacture that, Kevin. And they wanted to see how quickly I could program and set up the job.
Right, we're going to be coming back to that shortly now.
Okay.
Steve, can you give our listeners an overview of special projects at DMG Mori and everything that it entails?
Yeah, well, Joe, you know that the portfolio is enormous as far as DMG Mori is concerned, and we've got all sorts of areas which we specialise in, additive, which we've discussed, but the big thing that we do is big machines, and this is something that Kevin's got a tremendous amount of experience in. So if you look at the portfolio, we've got to support it from, let's call it the box shifting machines, where a customer may ring up, order a machine, it's delivered, he runs it, and that's it. And there's other side of the coin where there's deep diving into projects, and some of these projects are extremely complex these days, and all sorts of very complex industries as well. And what we have to have here in the UK is the ability to understand the customer's needs. So it really goes back to what John was saying back in the sales one, listening to the customer. But in the case of Kevin, what he's got to do is enormous amount of detail. He'll talk later about some of the things that he's involved in. But one of the machines that Kevin is involved with is a standard product coming out of Fronton. Circa normally around about £500,000. The sales price on this is 1.8 million. Because of the complexity that's involved. And the only way that you can do that is by going into that detail and having someone to really understand what the customer's needs are, what the legal requirements are, what the technical requirements and what the commercial requirements. So Kevin really heads up the real top end stuff of projects.
I think that's actually key, isn't it, Steve? Because I've been fortunate to work with you guys for a number of years and seen some massive installations, and most of them I can't talk about, to be fair. But when you speak to the customer, it's very much about the part, not necessarily just about the cost of part, but it's how can you produce that product more cost effectively and effectively allow you to actually do more things on the shop floor.
Yeah, it's very true. And just going back to our width and depth of our product, we can offer many solutions. But again, you only offer those solutions if you're able to back them up.
Are the days gone of just selling a machine tool without anything on it? I mean, effectively.
No. I think there's still a market for that. There's still people that we will do just general business with, and they'll order a machine, maybe a repeat order, maybe a new, particularly the M1, which is going into a different marketplace. These are kind of straight out the box, plug and play, and off we go. There's still a big market there, and there's still a lot of people that are very self-supportive. But the complexity that Kevin gets involved with, I mean, there is a skill shortage out there, we know, but the complexity that Kevin gets involved with will support the customer to that end.
Let's talk about this complexity then, Kevin.
Okay.
You were talking about a standard machine tool that you're talking around £400,000, and then with the added value that that you're adding on, £1 million plus. So it's kind of more than half of the price of the actual machine tool in itself.
Yes.
Tell me about, or give our listeners an example of some of these projects.
Okay, some of them, we can't speak of the actual names of the companies of some of these projects, but some of the projects are involved with volatile materials. Okay, I can't explain exactly the material, but you can imagine what a volatile material is. So therefore, the machine tool has to change to accommodate the volatile material. And that often involves myself initially looking at the component and listening to the customer on what he's looking to achieve. And you've got to bear in mind that this supply of machine tool probably used to come years ago from a bespoke machine tool builder. And they have, and a lot of the customers we work with have had bespoke machine tools made for them, but they don't really deliver geo. There's, a machine tool from the DMG Mori portfolio has had a very, very long period of research and development, so we know exactly how that product's going to respond. If you go and buy a bespoke built machine, it doesn't often deliver the required results. So what I do is listen to what the customer is looking to obtain or wanting to achieve. What sort of parts you're looking to produce? What material is it from? What fluids can be used on it so not to contaminate the surface of the part? And then I'll sit down and have a think of which particular machine tool within our portfolio best suits that application. When that's been identified, I would then contact the factory, and in some cases I have had a weekly meeting for a year, 2 years with the customer to go through the detail of what the paint will be inside the machine so it doesn't react with this volatile material, how the machine's got to be changed to accommodate their part. I can't give you all the detail of that.
It's not all about volatile materials, though, is it, Kevin?
No, it's not.
Because I would imagine that the type of companies that you're engaging with are companies that maybe not know DMG Mori, and suddenly you've got the right solution at the right time. But also, I'd presume that you've had to do a lot of education, for instance, on automation. Obviously, automation's a big key part of growth worldwide, and I think the UK, we'll probably all agree, we're still catching up against Europe. But your learning curve must be, yet again, have had to be expanded to actually deliver a full package.
Yeah, well, luckily enough, my background at one time was an automation specialist in my time in machine tools, and I've been with various machine tool companies, not just DMG Mori. I only joined DMG Mori, in fact, 7 years ago, because I'd got to a time in my career when I wanted to work for a Japanese supplier, and for me, there was no finer supplier, certainly of lathes and other machines, than Morisiki. So that's why I took a career change, and actually it was a fairly different situation. I actually approached Steve, One Mac, if you recall, Steve, for that position. But you're right. We do look at automation for customers. One customer is that I've delivered to a project for had 4 DMU 160 machines. But he wanted a special type of automation for his particular aerospace environment. So basically, rather than having a pallet machine, he wanted a 0-point location system built onto the table of that machine, and we would exchange a fixture to that 0-point location via a FASTM system. So all of that had to be coordinated with him and delivered.
I mean, 0 point, you mentioned 0 point. I believe in the future, not too long away, all machine tools will come with a 0-point bed as standard rather than a T-slotted bed. I can really see the benefits of that in regards to being able to automate your machine tools through palletisation. But let's start at the very, very beginning. If back in the day when we were apprentices and we were on the shop floor, we'd make our own jigs, we'd make our own fixtures. Effectively, we'd do the turnkey package ourselves.
Yeah.
This is becoming less and less. I think that the demand on the machine tool companies is significantly increased for them for you to do that for them. Is this due to skill levels in the UK, or is it due to time, or both? And can we start at, and it's a bit of a big question, but can we also start from the very beginning, the part, and how from that part you need to decide the machine tool, the work holding, the automation, the volume, and so on and so forth. I don't know who wants to answer that, Kevin.
Yeah, I can answer that for you. I mean, everything's about the part and the parts that they need to make, how quickly they need to make them. I mean, different companies you go to, Geo, have different requirements. For instance, if you walk into an automotive company, then it's all about time. because of cost. If you walk into, say, let's say a hydraulics company, it may not be about the time. It might be about the quality of product and the surface finish you can achieve. So, and aerospace is a different environment again. So what I learned as an applications engineer and as a area sales manager for a number of years is you change your hat and change the way you're going to look at a particular product depending on the industry that product is going to be used within.
No, that's a great answer. And Steve, from your time at DMG Mori, have you seen this part of your business increasing and becoming a bigger part of the business?
Yeah, I mean, we need to be a bit clearer here, I think, on this one, Gio, because general engineering and engineering support type of activity is a day-to-day business for us. So if a customer orders a machine and we want to work, or he wants us to work with him to give him some kind of level of support, be it right up to a full turnkey or right from just a sort of extra training situation, then that's just day-to-day business for us. We can handle that. We've got a team to do that. What we're talking about here with Kevin is very high complex work. The machines circa £1 million plus, where they need enormous amount of detail, and it needs dedication to understand that detail, and it also means that we can then pick up those larger projects as well. Now within the support mechanism, Kevin will have all the support necessary, but he will be heading up what are these critical points, what is the customer's requirements, and some of these projects that we're working on are maybe a year away as well. And but they take a lot of work to do, and most of our competitors don't really look upon it like that. There's one or two that actually specialise and they're quite niche and they do a good job. But what we don't want to be bottled or labelled as is a general machinist. We don't want to be a general machinist because we've got so many facets to our business. And this end of it, we've got some very big stuff, some gantry machines, some big turn mill machines, automation to go with it, some very specialised projects. So that's really what Kevin will head up. And the point here is that we have the facilities to put the detail together. A lot of companies will just chuck a quote over the fence and see how they get on. That's not good enough on this level of project.
I suppose the benefit, Steve, is when I've visited Fronton, on the shop floor even with a camera, because we was allowed at the time. When you look at the amount of information that's coming back to your plants where you're building machines, you can tap into that knowledge as well, can't you?
You can. Sometimes you have to approach Fronton and drive them in a particular direction. They've got a lot of technologies available at Fronton, but we're just working on a project at the moment that I can't give you too much detail on, but this particular customer could really do with 3 technologies. All those 3 technologies are available at Fronton, but they've never been all done on the same machine tool. So before we're going to particularly present our offer to our customer, first of all, I make sure that Fronton are aware that, we've got these 3 technologies, but have these 3 technologies been available on the same machine yet? And the answer that came back was no. So we do that research prior to us walking into a customer to say, yes, we can do this.
I mean, you are, leaders in innovation and you're continuously evolving and investing a lot of money in R&D. But the technology is one thing, but being able to apply it to an application is something completely different. And what you're saying here is you're being able to kind of cherry pick the best technology that you have and apply it to your potential clients. And there's got to be a massive element of trust in your clients to be able to kind of go on this journey with you for over a year, 2 years, because it's a lot of time that could be potentially wasted if it doesn't go right.
Yeah, you're spot on there, but you have to take that risk because that's the business we're in. And the reality actually is that some of our product has been developed by our customers' demands. So we listen to what the customer wants. Well, I say a lot of it actually has been, but we listen to the customer wants, and then we come up with a solution. And one of the solutions recently has been the laser deposition on the NT range of machines. So big multi mill turns, multi-axis mill turns, capable of laser deposition. So there's some of the examples, and so Kevin will have some good input into the factory. So it actually works a lot of the ways round. And okay, sometimes, you know, you might get to the hurdle and fall over. Maybe the customer doesn't win the contract. Maybe we don't win the contract. But we've both learned an awful lot, and we move on, and we work with lots of customers in that way.
Do you find sometimes, Kevin, that you might have let's say, I wouldn't say DMG Mori has an entry level, but if you took the M1, for instance, the 3 axis, you're going into a very competitive market, you put a machine in there, and that company then starts talking about, well, we've got another project. That machine's good. I want to investigate what you could actually deliver. Do you find that maybe sort of putting smaller equipment in as a proving ground opens the doors to talk to you from a special point of view?
Yeah, it's normally on quite a long gestation period, or can be. You'll often find that you may have a young engineer who starts with an M1, let's say, and he gets a good experience working with DMG Mori. Then as he progresses in his career and comes across more difficult applications, then very often, because of the experience they've had with the company and with the personnel within this company, they would then move on to feel confident that we could deliver on any other project.
I think it really identifies the skills level within DMG Mori and the resource that you've got to be able to kind of follow these projects through. You know, I mean, it's taking, obviously, one project's taking a lot of your time as an individual, so you need a whole team to be able to service the UK on these special projects. One question I have, you mentioned the aerospace industry. Obviously, the aerospace industry is lower volume, you know, work. It might repeat monthly, but it is lower volume. For a turnkey packaging that entails lower volume work, maybe families apart, how do you kind of look at a project like that? Or is it predominantly higher volume work, or companies that are maybe making their own components, like you mentioned, the automotive industry?
Just depends on each individual company, what they're trying to achieve. I mean, we have delivered some machines with automation, especially in the fixture for aerospace. One of the particular projects that we've completed, and we alluded to it earlier, was 4 times 160 machines, but they also had special clamping and had a need for special clamping. So their machine, although we exchanged their fixtures via Fastems, their fixtures were pretty clever in the way that when we start machining for the roughing process, we start with hydraulic clamping. There's 2 circuits of hydraulic clamping, so often we need to drop some clamps out while we machine past those clamps and then bring those clamps back on again. The hydraulics are not just hydraulics like some other machine tool suppliers may offer you. The hydraulics are programmable hydraulics from a pressure of around about 50 bar up to 200 bar in 1 bar steps. Not only with that, they also, towards the end of the finishing of that part, drop all the hydraulic clampings, because we put on a vacuum, which is a programmable vacuum as well, remove all of the hydraulic clamping and finish the part just under vacuum.
Wow. I mean, for me, I think that, you know, you look at a machine tool and that is like the blank canvas, isn't it? You know, what you're doing is really adding massive value to that machine tool. What you're doing now, the turnkey, is the art, effectively. And you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yeah.
So you're effectively maximising that machine tool's productivity and getting the absolute best out of that machine tool through the project work that you're doing. And does this, sorry for the long question, but does this also, are you also learning by doing these projects and evolving your products and solutions off the back of it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the industry now, Gio, for 40 years, and my old technical director that I used to have as a German guy used to say, Kevin, in machine tools, you probably only get to understand your engineering side from when you're about 30 to 35 years in. So now 40 years in, we've got a fairly rounded experience of what we can do on which parts, and we just use that knowledge.
So you're just 5 years in then?
Yeah.
You never stop learning.
Steve, looking at the business, how it's evolved since you've been managing director here, you look at, the portfolio has obviously grown, obviously with the changes with DMG and also Mori as well. the special project side, it can only increase because I think the demands within engineering and manufacturing, certainly in the UK, if not worldwide, sort of do fit your portfolio, don't they?
Yeah, I think we've got an answer for most things now, and but we've got to be able to back it up, and we've got to be able to support it. We've got to be able to talk about it, both very technically and commercially. And we've got to be able to put a solution in front of the customer that works. And what Kevin's looking at here is some very, very complex stuff. Run-of-the-mill, let's say run-of-the-mill turnkey or run-of-the-mill engineering support. As I said, we do that all the time. But the product range, realistically, we can turn from, very, very small sub-millimetre parts on Swiss sliding autos, right up to parts that are sort of, 5 or 10 metres big, and everything in between. And then, of course, you can then start adding various things like gear skiving, grinding, laser ablation, all these kind of things to various products. So, yeah, well, for sure, we keep learning every day, and the market's learning every day, and we have to support that. We do.
And I think the market, personally, over the last few years has really taken massive steps in, trying to keep that component actually, on that machine, so there's no downtime. And that's key for a lot of customers these days, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, UK manufacturing, I think, is doing very well, particularly since sort of post-Brexit. There's been some challenges for sure. We all know, we recognise what they are. But I think that actually UK manufacturing is very strong, it's very resilient, it understands what it needs to do. There's some great entrepreneurial people out there that understand how to develop the market. I was at a place last week and they were doing components and they were reducing the cost by half. Wow. And you think that's actually quite good. This particular component was £88,000. Wow. Reduced it by half. And they've done some fantastic engineering, utilising our multitasking machines to achieve that. So yeah, the market's strong, and it's. I would suggest anyone we can tackle anyone throughout the world.
Working with clients in the UK and people that want to work with you on projects such as this, Kevin, does that put them in a different league? You've mentioned automation, grinding, laser, additive, subtractive, and everything in between. You are giving them effectively cutting edge technology, plus you're turnkeying it for them. Does that make them competitive, not just in the UK, but around the world? And how important is that competitiveness now for us in the UK?
It's absolutely essential for us to maintain our competitiveness globally. I mean, I'm only interested in the UK. I'm only interested in making the UK competitive. So, but we can always pick up from what we see from Italy, from France, from the rest of Europe and the rest of the world. But the beauty is, for me, for working at DMG Mori, is that you go to a customer to look at an application to deliver a solution, and you've got over 150 different machine tools you can choose from, so you can choose the right solution from the start in the way of a machine tool. You've got 54 different types of automation if we need to use automation.
You're just showing off now, aren't you?
You've got those tools available to you, whereas you may not have that at another company.
Are you loving your job, Kevin? I mean, it is a fantastic job. I mean, it's pure engineering, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Steve, now one thing that's changed, recently with DMG Mori is the finance side. Can the finance side be passed over to the special products, or is it just for standard?
No, absolutely. We've just financed a deal, actually this month, 3.6 million, and that's no problem for us at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's good for companies to know. But obviously, if they want to, maybe they're not working with you at the moment, but the finance side has helped you sell a lot more machines over the last year or two, haven't they?
Yeah, and I mean, we've got one big project which was for an aerospace company, and that company just had a 2-year contract, So we actually did a 2-year op lease with that company. And actually after I think something like 12 months in, they got an extension to their contract. They extended. So it gives them less risk, because otherwise they're putting down £1 million for a machine tool for two years. It's not viable.
Yeah.
So we can finance that. We can support that kind of thing as well, yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. The beauty is with DMG Mori Finance is that we could offer the tooling, the fixture financed. We could offer peripheral equipment as part of that financial package as well. So it helps us as well because we then know there's an affordability process that the customer can go down to be able to continue with the project.
And if you take that headache away from a customer and just saying, I can deliver the whole package and back it up, it's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Steve, Kevin, Mark, it's been an absolutely fascinating and interesting podcast. Any last thoughts? Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but Kevin, what would you say to potential listeners that would want to embrace your knowledge?
Just by your area business manager, speak to them, and if the project is of a nature that the company feel that I should be involved with, then I'll be only too pleased to get involved and start working on it with them.
Steve?
Yeah, the technical structure that we're laid out now allows us to work into most companies and give them, pretty realistic solutions, along with good technical backup. And having people like Kevin on board is fantastic for our business. There's so much experience with him and some of the other engineers that work with us as well, and sales guys across the board, that it makes us a very strong opportunity to go forward with companies.
Yeah, I would add also, Steve, as much as I've known you for 30 years, obviously known DMG Mori or DMG and Mori, over the years as well. By producing these podcasts, I've personally learned a lot more than what I thought I knew. And I think the next podcast that we're going to be doing is sitting down and really going through all the sort of key points of what you guys actually deliver. So,
yes, yeah, that's the wrap-up podcast. So if anybody's missed the individual ones, this gives them an opportunity to look at the salient points that we're looking at our business. But it's been great, actually, Mark Geo, because I wanted to really open this company to people and be very transparent about what we do here. We do our best. We're not perfect, we sometimes get it wrong, but then we address it again and we look at it and we make sure that we get it right the second time, or perhaps we get it right the first time. So that's life, that's engineering, that's the difficulty of engineering. But yeah, it's been a great journey. So look forward to the wrap-up one.
Yeah, definitely.
Steve, Kevin, Mark, thank you very much. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please let us know. Any questions, let us know. And as Steve says, we've been embarked on a podcast journey, so you can find all the previous podcasts on the MTD platform. Until next time, the MTD podcast.
Thanks for listening to the MTD podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on mtdcnc.com.